So, all right, everybody, this will be, have you ever been a victim, slash, no police? Ask the Mexicans. So you see these politicians are now pandering about, and you see these groups getting up saying, don't need no police, this and that. Then we just go through a whole thing with people coming across the border, seeking refugee status to get away from the drug gangs, cartels, the crime in their countries. Wasn't that the excuse we were given, that they're coming across the border? They were seeking refugee status to get away from the crime. Sometimes, at some point, you got to get to where the rubber meets the road and cut through the bullshit. Cut through the bullshit, because these politicians are pandering, and they will say and do anything to appease they will go back and forth. They're talking out of both sides of their mouths. And so are these leftist groups that are coming up with all this crap. No police? Ask the Mexicans. Ask the people down in South America where the corruption's so bad and stuff, and the cartels and whatever run the show, where the cops can't even go into certain towns, where the drug cartels openly fight them in the streets. I want to ask you, the stuff you've been seeing now on TV, is it much different than when you look at that crap down south of the border? Is it much different? People out in the streets, we're just gonna steal right in front of you. We're just gonna beat people on the street right in front of you. And the mayors of these towns and everybody telling the police, "Oh, be careful what you do. Be careful what you do. We don't need anything else to happen." Well, what are they supposed to do? At some point, you got to use force, man. At some point. So you want no police? You want that thug mindset? The mob mentality? Ask the Mexicans. Who say they're coming here to be refugees, to raise their families. Where they don't have to be living under threats of gangs and all this type of stuff. But what do? When that kid got killed in Baltimore, you had the gang members up there on the podium with the cops and the mayor. You need to clear the cobwebs out of the weed or whatever the hell it is out of your head and open your eyes. These people are talking out of both sides of their mouths. You're going to coddle these gangs and be light on crime and all this and everything and all this, and let these groups get out there and broadcast and brainwash people that hey, they shouldn't be able to police society. They shouldn't be able to use force. You should let people out of prisons. Do you see over in Germany? I was pretty sure it was Germany. I was watching a program once showing this guy, he's eating. They're eating out at some outside cafe. At first they thought it was one of those food shows. Him and his mom and his kid or something. Anyway, it turns out this guy had committed murder or hired somebody to murder his ex-wife or something, or he murdered her. And they have pretty much, instead of a prison, They have these things that are like apartments for some of these convicts. They're free to come and go. They are free to come and go. Isn't that special? Have somebody killed or try to have somebody killed, just go out and sit on a sidewalk cafe with your mom or whoever she was. Ain't that special? Well, bleeding hearts are for the criminals, nothing for the victims. We live in an ass-backwards world. This is the nether world. Isn't that precious? We're not gonna put them in prison. We're gonna be progressive, and we're gonna use taxpayer dollars and give them like apartments, and they can come and go. They can go to work. They can do all these things. Where's the incentive, the deterrence to crime there? Huh? You go out and commit a crime, okay. You get a nice apartment. All right, granted, they were small little apartments, but you can come and go as you please. Well, they might have qualified as cells or whatever, but still, they could come and go as they please. Go to work, go visit friends, whatever. Now, I could understand that for somebody owed taxes or back child support, something like of a non-violent nature. For drug dealers and people commit robbery and all these types of things. Sorry. Sorry, Charlie. But no police. Ask the Mexicans. Aren't we were told we got to let all these people in? They're fleeing gangs. They're fleeing gangs and violence. They're fleeing gangs and violence, but you turn a blind eye to the violence going on in the streets right now. It's okay that the cops are being attacked by thugs because you need votes. Better wake up. Whether you're black, white, or Mexican in this country, you better wake up. You better let your voices be heard too. All the people on the left supporting all this thuggery and everything like that, they're damn sure letting their voices be heard. Don't be afraid of them. They want to make you afraid. They want to Antifa and these groups, they want to make you afraid. They'll target you. Don't be afraid. We still have some politicians who have some stones. We need to say, no, we're not going to be afraid, and you're not going to target us. We're targeting you. We're coming after you. You want to make threats, terrorist threats, and extortion on people of this country who are tired of the crime, tired of seeing what's on their TV? Guess what? If you got to use the army, they signed that thing. The military can arrest you for terrorist activity. Well, we got domestic terrorism going on right now. We've got domestic terrorism going on right now on our streets. And they'll tell you they're proud of it. If it's what they got to do, it's what they got to do. That's what they teach these kids. And they're busing them in, too. Bussing them in from some places. They're being paid protesters, which turn into paid looters, anarchists. You need to find all the people behind him and keep hearing George Soros' name, all these other names, supporting it on Twitter and everything else. These basketball players and stuff in support of it. You need to go find them and round them up. They're terrorists and they're extortionists. And if you don't restore law and order, ask the Mexicans. Ask the people trying to cross our border that we're told are fleeing crime and gangs in their streets. Have you all lost your minds? Are you all so absorbed with something else in your life that what have we heard during COVID? Oh my God, no sports. No sports, no sports, no sports. Can't wait for sports to come back. Oh, now sports are going to come back. Something else to preoccupy the people's minds. So I think in this, I'm just going to parlay this into the thing about Pharmaca, drugs. So you'll hear a lot of Christian preachers talking about drugs playing a role in end times and stuff. So here's the thing where it deals with the 1800s. If you don't know, there's a faith called the Baha'i faith. Basically, the Baha'i faith says the Imam al-Mahdi, the Mahdi of Islam, made his appearance in the 1800s. So when you see these new groups, these black flag groups and all this and everything, that all that was already fulfilled. And that these people who are looking for the Mahdi and the return of Christ and everything have missed the boat. Because it happened in the 1800s. Both Christians and Muslims will deny this. Because of what their scholars and all this, these very same scholars and preachers, because there's a lot of Christian preachers who tell people to do a lot of crazy things too. And priests of the past, it don't matter, priests, preachers, whatever, which conveniently, there's been some priests and preachers come out and say, this is justified what's going on. It's not justified. They even said, oh, according to the gospel. No, I'm sorry. I don't know what gospel you're reading. I don't know anywhere where Jesus condoned murder and stealing. I know the Prophet Muhammad never condoned murder and stealing. Quran says in it point blank, do not steal. Which amazes me too in this country. We got people who profess Islam who are lockstep with everything on the left. Abortion all the way up to the time of birth. The homosexual marriage thing, all this type of stuff, which is very far from Islamic teachings. And then you have the ones that are aligned with Nation of Islam and stuff, which is very far from Islamic teachings also. Look up the videos of Farrakhan and the story of Yaqub and black supremacy and how all us white people came into being, by the way, and the other races all came into being according to their theology, which is found nowhere within the Quran or anywhere else. In the Quran, it says God made us all different so that we might know each other. He gave us all our ways, all the religions. And if you read other religion scriptures, you will see your scriptures within them. There's one God. He's guided all of humanity. Now, if the message has been perverted after the time of the prophet and the apostles and stuff, it explains that and the progression of religion and why there'll always be a messenger sent, because people pervert things and go astray. Society goes, so he sends someone else. And so going back to the Baha'i faith, the Imam made his appearance. He made his declaration that he was the one they were waiting for. There were many people who followed him, but the main clerics and stuff of the day, and one who, if you know anything about Islam, the Dajjal came from Cyprus. These scholars in him, they put him on trial, and he knew the Quran better than any of them did, explained it to them frontwards and backwards better than any of them did, and they didn't like that. They were more or less told they're being put out of business. They weren't going to have their authority no more, things of that nature. And then he said of the one who would come after him, thus meaning, because the Imam was supposed to announce in Islam the return of Christ, but even in Christianity that's skewed, because now they're telling you got to wait for a third temple to be built and then all this other stuff, and then Christ will come. And this, if you read the gospel, that's not what Jesus said. He said, like a thief in the night, and knowledge would be increased, and he'd be called by another name. And there's other references as to he'll come from the land of Elam. If you look at Elam, it's in southwestern Iran, along the Persian Gulf there. So this happened in the 1800s. First the Imam came, declared who he was. Then the one who would come after him, the one that all religions, because all religions talk about the one who will unite humanity and lead them on the right path. Well, he came. He declared who he was. He announced himself and sent messengers and letters to the kings of Europe, to the kings of the Middle East, to the Pope. Now both the Imam and his followers, including the one who God would make manifest, meaning, in a sense, the return of Jesus, the Spirit of truth, the manifestation of God, would be called by another name, and you can read your Bible. It says right in there, the glory of God. And in Arabic, that's Baha'u'llah. This all happened in the 1800s. But anyway, one of the things, when the Imam made his appearance, that was big within the Islamic community was drugs, to a certain extent, was hashish and opium. And I guess because one of the things on how he was recognized, it says one of the ones he revealed himself to said he one of the signs was he never smoked. And you see now through all of Islam, hookahs and people smoke, and they're chewing cat. So that's pharmaca. If cat's a drug, it's a problem in some Muslim countries. So they're all preoccupied with their lives and their wealth and these other things that they shouldn't have been doing. And so their minds were not thinking right. Their minds, they were not listening to him, a lot of them. And then there's some other things, like if you're Shia, you know about praying on a clay tablet. Well, through all of Turkey and stuff like that, I guess at the time everyone, was making money in the trade of clay tablets. I guess from Karbala. So people were preoccupied with all kinds of things. So now you want to make weed legal? Are you still drinking and involved so much in sports you don't know what's going on in the world around you? Are you so involved with smoking weed and going to the club and watching them drop it like a pit bull that you don't know what's going on in the world around you? What else? What else is there? Are you so involved with your stocks and your investments that you don't know what's going on in the world around you? Are you so involved in your progressive leftist movements and your anarchy and stuff like that that you don't even see how the people guiding you are contradicting themselves? And same thing on the right. There's a lot of that on the right too. There's one thing about Trump. He said he wanted to get us out of these countries militarily involved. He didn't think it was right to invade Iraq. He didn't think it's right to go in and overthrow governments and stuff. And all the needless suffering it creates. I mean, whether you like him or not, you got to admit, since the time he's taken office, he's been damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Doesn't matter. You're just on the opposite side of him. Doesn't matter what he does. Kim Jong-un's making all his threats and all this and everything and firing missiles off. First Trump goes over there and talks to him. Oh my God, he's talking to the awful dictator, this and that, and blah, 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 and all this and everything. He needs to be tougher. He needs to be tougher. Then Kim Jong-un did whatever, and Trump's like, I'll annihilate you, and this and that. Oh my God, he's going to start a war. He's going to start a war. Oh, he's not tough enough on Iran. Then he gets tough on Iran. Oh, he's too tough on Iran. It doesn't matter what he does. You couldn't pay me enough to be a police officer. You couldn't pay me enough to be president of this country. I'll tell you that. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Whether you're a cop or whether you're president. Life isn't always neat and tidy. We can do the best we can. But saying getting rid of cops, ask the Mexicans. Crime and drugs. So when I get into the Pharmeca thing, so are drugs, popular culture keeping you from the truth? If you look at the header on this channel, you'll see part of the explanation of what it started out to be. And if you look at a lot of the videos I've saved, the religious ones, you'll understand. Anyhow, back in 2000 into 2001, right before my son was born, or right before my wife even got pregnant, and then after she was pregnant, and then when my son was born, I had a lot of questions about life and stuff. I would read my Bible, read in there about, the sins of the father being passed and all this, and my wife at the time was desperate. She wanted to have a baby. All her friends are having babies. Her sisters have babies. Everyone had dropping babies like nothing, and she was having a hard time getting pregnant. So I prayed to God for a child, not so much for my sake, but for hers. But I prayed that I didn't care if it was a boy or girl, just not for especially if I had a son, not for him to do the things I've done in my life that I know are wrong. And like I said before in these videos here, I made my mistakes when I was young. And I believe in repentance. I believe in giving people chances. But there's a point, I think, where you got to say, we can't afford to let you keep hurting people and giving you chances. But anyway, so I had a lot of questions. What was I going to teach him about life? What was I going to teach him? I didn't have my father in my life. Didn't grow up privileged. Started working when I was 14. My mom did the best she could. She was no nonsense on a lot of stuff. And one of the things was she didn't want me to grow up like my old man and be a fighter and, a drinker and all that type of stuff, which I'm sorry to say I did for a little while in my younger life. But my old man was, had shoulders 3 feet wide and fists like sledgehammers. And he could clear a bar like nobody's business. I heard that from many people growing up. And if I even got a fight in school or down the block or something like it, somehow, I swear mothers got to be psychic because they show up out of nowhere. But anyway, then things were seeming pretty good. And then 9/11 happened. And it seemed like everyone went mad. I guess everyone was already mad. But it just started becoming apparent to me. And so I, especially hearing all the bad things about Muslims and Islam and all this. And I had Muslim friends when I was younger. And I was like, wait a minute, they don't believe any of that. I started looking at, well, there's one God. Why is there so many religions in the world? If you're Christian and you're brought up Christian, you kind of take it for granted. Boom, you never had to. Do you know how hard it was for Jews or anybody who accepted Christianity to accept that as the truth? Pretty much it's done here without question in the States for the most part. For most people, you're either brought up in the tradition or no. And same thing within Islam. You have generation after generation who vouchsafes that, hey, here's the religion. This is the truth and stuff. But do you know it was hard for a lot of people? Here you got somebody coming and telling you that God's talking to them and they're the prophet. They're the manifestation. So I kind of started having questions about everything. Who is God? I even asked him, I said, who are you? Who's telling the truth? I'm just a stupid man. Show me, please. Tell me who's telling the truth. And that started my search, and that's what was in the header here. I started a search. I started reading everything I could. Had a lot of questions. Converted to Islam, then to Shia Islam. After I found out what was done to the Prophet's family. But then I still had a lot of questions. What Shia scholars, and they were doing a lot of things. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And it seemed like, because when I first read the Quran, it's like, finally, here it is. Guidance. Because that's what I'd pray for, guidance. And that's what the Quran says it is guidance. And it is guidance. But then you have to start to understand that when you start looking at people who try to guide you from that book, they might not be so well guided. Their understanding and their wants and desires in the world might be skewing everything. So that leads to more questions and stuff. And so then I just always kept praying for guidance. And that's what you all need to do, is always pray for guidance. Because God didn't go to sleep. He ain't on vacation. He's still there. And like it says in the Quran, if the sea were ink and the sky were parchment, you could not contain or write all the words of God. And that's why the glory of God, Baha'u'llah, and the Imam wrote. They wrote volumes and volumes and volumes of guidance for mankind. And you'll find those in the Baha'i faith. So I'm going to leave that at this one now. I'll do another one to explain that part of my journey. And thank God I was in a thing on YouTube where there was a Baha'i who left comments and told me certain things to look at. And after I looked at them, I was still kind of having doubts, but then after I looked at them, they made sense. And I can see that the Imam, which is called the Bab, B-A-B, and Baha'u'llah, the glory of God, fulfilled everything that was supposed to be fulfilled. And so, but it can be hard to move to something new because you are leaving that comfort zone. You're placing trust instead of just, well, that's what you grew up and that's what everybody else believes, so yeah, it must be right stuff. You're going out there on the ledge for a little bit to find out if it's true. And that's not always easy, but anyhow, I just want to, I'll continue this on another one, but I want to get to the point about how life and the things you do and stuff. Are you preoccupied? What are you preoccupied with? What should you be looking for? You should be looking for your Maker and the messages He sent, instead of legalizing weed and all this other junk. Anyhow, I'll leave that for now. Wish you all the best out there. God bless.